In the spring of 1986, the Soviet Union stood as one of the world's two superpowers. Its nuclear energy program represented technological achievement and national pride. At the Chernobyl Nuclear Power Plant, located in northern Ukraine, reactor number 4 was scheduled for a routine safety test. The procedure had been delayed multiple times, and plant operators were under pressure to complete it before a scheduled maintenance shutdown. What happened in the early hours of April 26th would become the most expensive nuclear accident in history, with costs that continue to accumulate nearly 4 decades later. The test itself was meant to determine whether the reactor's turbines could produce enough electricity to keep coolant pumps running during a power outage. It was a reasonable question. Emergency diesel generators took roughly 1 minute to reach full capacity, and engineers wanted to know if the turbines, spinning down after shutdown, could bridge that gap. But the test required reducing the reactor's power output significantly. Operators began the process late on April 25th. The reduction should have been gradual and controlled. Instead, a series of decisions, each made under time pressure and institutional constraint, began to compound. Records indicate that the day shift handed over to the night shift before the test was complete. The night crew had limited experience with this particular procedure. They were not specialists in reactor physics. They were operators following a test program, working within a system that discouraged questioning authority or deviating from instructions. Around 1 a.m., power output dropped far below the intended level, nearly to the point of shutdown. To compensate, operators withdrew control rods further than safety protocols normally allowed. The reactor design itself created a vulnerability. In certain configurations, the RBMK reactor became unstable at low power. The control rod design, intended as a safety feature, could actually cause a brief surge in reactivity when first inserted. Operators disabled or bypassed multiple safety systems to continue the test. Historians suggest this was not recklessness but confidence. The systems seemed redundant. The reactor had operated for years. The test had been delayed too many times already. Each decision, taken individually, appeared manageable. At 1:23 a.m., the order was given to proceed. Within seconds, power output spiked uncontrollably. Operators attempted an emergency shutdown, inserting all control rods simultaneously. The design flaw triggered a sudden increase in heat rather than suppression. Fuel channels ruptured. Steam pressure built beyond containment capacity. 2 explosions followed. The reactor core was exposed. Radioactive material began dispersing into the atmosphere. The plant's reinforced concrete structure could not contain a disaster of this scale because it had never been designed for one. Soviet reactor buildings lacked the full containment structures common in Western designs, a cost-saving measure that assumed such an event was impossible. In the immediate aftermath, confusion dominated. Plant leadership initially downplayed the severity. The nearby city of Pripyat, home to roughly 50,000 people, was not evacuated until the afternoon of April 27th, more than 36 hours after the explosion. Residents were told to prepare for a temporary absence of 3 days. Most would never return. Fire crews responded without protective equipment or knowledge of radiation exposure. Many received lethal doses within hours. The scope of contamination became clear only as radiation detectors across Europe registered abnormal readings. Sweden detected increased levels on April 28th, forcing Soviet officials to acknowledge something had occurred. The immediate response cost was enormous. More than 600,000 workers, called liquidators, were mobilized over the following months and years. They built a concrete sarcophagus around the destroyed reactor, cleared radioactive debris, and decontaminated surrounding areas. Evidence points to significant long-term health consequences for many of these individuals, though exact numbers remain disputed. An exclusion zone was established, covering roughly 2,600 square kilometers. Agricultural land, forests, and entire communities were abandoned. The economic loss extended beyond the reactor itself. 3 other reactors at Chernobyl continued operating for years, but public confidence in nuclear energy collapsed across much of Europe. Estimating the total cost remains difficult. The Soviet government officially acknowledged spending approximately 18 billion rubles, equivalent to hundreds of billions in modern currency. Ukraine continues to allocate significant portions of its budget to Chernobyl-related expenses. A new containment structure, completed in 2016, cost over $2 billion and is designed to last a century. The health costs are measured in both direct casualties and long-term exposure effects. 31 people died within months from acute radiation syndrome. Thousands of cases of thyroid cancer have been directly linked to radioactive iodine released during the accident, particularly among children. The broader health impact remains debated, with estimates of premature deaths ranging from thousands to hundreds of thousands, depending on methodology. Beyond monetary and human costs, Chernobyl carried political consequences. The disaster exposed systemic weaknesses in Soviet governance. The delayed response, initial denials, and forced evacuations eroded public trust. Historians suggest the accident contributed to the pressures that led to glasnost and, eventually, the Soviet Union's dissolution. What makes Chernobyl particularly instructive is that it did not result from malice or ignorance. The operators were trained professionals. The reactor had functioned for years. The test procedure itself was not inherently dangerous. The mistake emerged from accumulated decisions, each seemingly justified, made within a system that prioritized production schedules over safety margins and discouraged the questioning of procedures. The Chernobyl accident revealed how confidence, institutional pressure, and design compromises could combine into catastrophe. The costs, both immediate and deferred, continue to accumulate. The exclusion zone remains, a monument to decisions made in the span of hours that will require management for centuries. What began as a routine safety test became a mistake measured not just in rubles or lives, but in contaminated land, abandoned cities, and a permanent alteration of how the world approached nuclear energy.